by Dr. R.N. Patra. He will be speaking on thorium reserves potential for power generation, exploration, and mining. Dr. R.N. Patra is the Chairman and Managing Director of the Indian Rare Earths Limited, a Government of India undertaking under the Department of Atomic Energy. So with this brief introduction, I will request Dr. Patra to give his talk. I would also request to limit his lecture within 25 minutes and 5 minutes for discussion. Dr. Patra, please.
Good morning. So, I will be speaking on the reserves of thorium potential for power generation, exploration, and mining. And this is the brief outline of my talk. Source of thorium and rare earths, strategic importance, mining and mineral processing, value chain technology challenges, and opportunities. Here I must place on record that we have deliberated substantially on the nuclear application of thorium. I would be talking or focusing my deliberation mostly on the issues associated with thorium mining, extraction, and the potential of thorium for non-nuclear applications. I begin with the statute. The reason being, thorium is never found in isolation, like iron, aluminium, copper, lead. Thorium is often associated with many other things. Probably the only mineral where thorium is seen in isolation is thorite, and that itself is very rare. The most common mineral of thorium is monazite, and that's a phosphate of thorium, rare earths, uranium, and there are monazites all over the world, and the concentration of thorium varies in them from anywhere 0.5% to as high as 30%. India has been fortunate to have thorium containing monazite around 9%, and this monazite also does not occur in isolation. It comes with many more minerals. That's why the associated mineral. This is the regulatory terms. One will see this in the Mineral Concession Rule 1960, framed under the Mineral Mines Development Regulation 1957. These are the group of associated minerals listed, and you can see that line in red, the 7-1, ilmenite, monazite, zircon, rutile, garnet, sillimanite, they are all together. They all occur along the beach sand in the coastal India, hence the name beach sand mineral. This is a brief of the suite of minerals. The first three, ilmenite, rutile, leucoxene, they're oxide of titanium. Ilmenite has 50%, the lowest in titanium. It can be sometime as high as 60 in India. Rutile is an enriched form of titanium going 95%. Leucoxene is in between, having 70 to 92% of titanium dioxide. Zircon is a silicate mineral. It is a zirconium silicate, main source of zirconium metal. Monazite, we have already discussed on this. Sillimanite and garnet. Sillimanite is aluminium silicate. It is mostly for a refractory usage. And garnet, iron aluminium silicate, for abrasive usage. This is the periodic table, and I have deliberately put white rings around the elements that we see in all these suite of 7 minerals. You see titanium, you see zirconium, you see hafnium, you see thorium, uranium, entire suite of rare earths starting from 57 atomic number to 71, 21 and 39 included in group 3B of the periodic table. And this is the reserve list. The reserves keep changing. Just for brevity or easy for comprehension, it is about 1 billion tons. My figures are 2012, and every year the exploration happens, and Atomic Mineral Directorate Exploration Research keeps on adding to the reserve list. And this slide is of interest to this audience for one reason. Monazite is the only source of rare earths in India. That is the commercial source. All over the world, we get rare earth mostly from bastnäsite. This is another mineral which is non-radioactive, doesn't have any thorium or uranium. In India, we get it from monazite, and the entire resource base of rare earth, if you look at it, is only 2 to 3% compared to the Chinese resource that is 60%. Even the US resource is much bigger than this. Entire Indian program of rare earths is based on monazite source. So thorium assumes associated importance along with that. This is the occurrence of minerals. On the right, you see the beach in Kerala or Tamil Nadu, where the black sands are the source of these 7 minerals. They are deposited during monsoon by the sea waves, and post-monsoon they are harvested, just like a crop. It's a sustainable way of getting. Every year, year after year, you would get it. This is a 100-year-old mine which we own and operate. Unlike conventional minerals, when you take the minerals out of the ground is barren. Here it is not so. Here you see the dunes. This you see on the east coast. The mineral occur in bands, black sands, and they are dredged below water table and taken for processing. Thorium fuel cycle, I need not say about it. This I will take 1 minute on this, because this is where the Indian rare earths mineral find usage in atomic energy. Some of the rare earth, europium, gadolinium, samarium, go into nuclear control rods. They have high coefficient to absorb neutron, and your zirconium goes into the cladding material, and thorium and uranium are the potential fuel for the nuclear reactors. 3-stage atomic energy program, we have deliberated quite a lot, where the thorium significance is for the future. This is the need for energy. This is a slide. The numbers, the statistics are quite well known probably to everybody here. But the point to make is, with a country of 1.2 billion population, where 1/3 are not today having access to electricity, and the average electricity consumption is 100 units per capita, against the world average of 5,000 units, we have a long way to go in terms of meeting the energy requirement of this country. Meanwhile, we are all aware of the problem of carbon pollution, global warming, and if you have to consider all these and ensure growth for this nation, the only way out is a low carbon source of energy. Barring renewable energies, atomic energy is the lowest in carbon footprint, and that compares well with solar or wind in terms of its carbon footprint. There are other issues which I am not going to talk, continuous availability, base load, but these issues are slowly getting resolved with rapid development in technology, which I will be touching on during the course of my deliberation. We have already talked about it. The thorium is 4 or 5 times than the uranium resource, and it is all in the bit sand. And properties of monazite, this is just a curiosity, academic curiosity. This is a yellowish green looking mineral, and radioactive. The radioactivity is 380 becquerel per gram. It's quite high. Now we have a second source, genotime. Between monazite and genotime, the commonalities both are phosphate, but monazite has less of yttrium and genotime have plenty of them. Genotime availability in this country is very, very meager compared to that of monazite. It is only about 1,000 tons against 12 million tons of monazite reserves established by Atomic Mineral Directorate, Exploration and Research. This is the brief history of thorium. The most interesting part is, thorium first came to commercial usage towards the end of 19th century for imparting brightness to the dull yellow flame of the gas. Till and until the thorium mantle was invented by Austrian scientists, people are all using the dull yellow flame of the gas after sunset, and there was a lot of work going on to make it bright. Before that, the only bright source of light was limelight, which was produced by putting acetylene torch on a block of lime. But the entire apparatus system was so complex and it was so expensive It was not within the common man's reach. The thorium gas mantle made the change. Then the usage happened. And those days, it was much more competitive compared to the electric bulbs, which Alva Edison had just invented, and they were expensive and their longevity was much low compared to these gas mantles. With that, the Kerala sand and the Manavalakurchi sand containing thorium drew the attention of the Westerners, and that is how the mines got established way back in 1909. That's why the history is important. In India, the first thorium processing started in Alwa in Kerala. I will just show this map. That is again in Kerala. You can see the west side, the thin strip of land. This is 20 kilometers from Cochin Airport. 1952, the plant was built on a patented technology brought from France. And that produced the thorium, which was taken to the thorium plant in Trombay, Bombay, where the corporate office of the company is located. And it was processed into gas mantles. That is how it started. Rare earths those days were having very little use, and if at all, it was all used in mixed form. The separation technology of rare earth was established, but not a commercial success. This is how the mining goes on. On the top, I have shown you the dredge mining, where the floating unit scoops the material out below water table. Then it is taken to a concentrator. Heavies are separated and gangue is used to refill the mined out area. And after the mining, it is planted. Plantation is taken place. Mineral separation, all 7 minerals are separated from each other in a purely physical form without use of any chemicals. The electrical properties, the magnetic properties, the densities, the size, all are used to separate this mineral one from the other by using industrial equipment. And now we come to the monazite processing. I will take a little time to say why rare earth became important today. If you look at the entire history of human development, till 1980, there was absolutely no legislation to control industrial activities. Even in our country, 1985, we have the first Environment Protection Act. Our Atomic Energy Regulatory Board probably came 2 years before that, 1983. Same story in Europe and USA. Once the legislations came, because the industrial activities was weighing heavily on the human population, people became aware of lead poisoning. The lead basically coming out of the exhaust gas of automobiles. Automobile revolution started only in early part of 20th century. It took 60 years for people to realize the problems of the nuisance associated with that kind of industrial development. So on and so forth with many other things. Another thing was silently happening, that is probably by 1939, first nuclear fission was established. Nuclear reactors came into existence. And nuclear fuel, when it burns, they generate some of these lanthanides, and they are neutron capturing. So if you need to sustain the nuclear reaction, you need to separate them. So the nuclear industry developed partitioning or solvent extraction as a method to separate rare earths from the actinides. That is how the rare earths industry benefited from the development of nuclear industry. And once the legislations came into picture, a lot of applications of these rare earths became known or came into existence, because then there was a driver, economic driver. Before that, there was only 4 usage of this particular rare earth, starting from 1910 till 1960. Number 1 application was for polishing the glass. We all know these CRT tubes or television tubes or even automobile windshield, they need a polish. So cerium oxide or the rare earth mixed form was used. Second usage was cinemascope. That is rare earth fluoride put in the core of carbon electrodes, make bright light, used for cinemascope projection. Third usage was gas mantle, with which it started. But these 2 uses were much bigger than the gas mantle usage. The fourth one, alloy, for grain refining in the cast iron foundries. But interesting is, all are mixed, no separated rare earth usage. By 60s to 90s, people established the usage for separated rare earth. Petroleum refineries were using mixed rare earth in catalyst to make gasoline, which would require addition of tetraethyl lead for improving the octane number. But once the legislation came, people thought of ways to eliminate addition of tetraethyl lead, and then came the usage of new catalyst made of separated rare earth lanthanum, known as fluid cracking catalyst, where you produce gasoline which are reformed with having naturally high octane number. You don't need to add lead as an additive. That is how the evolution took place. Nuclear energy bringing in the separation capability by way of solvent extraction, legislation driving the entire thing. Permanent magnets are developed around same time, but we need to wait another 20 years to see permanent magnet usage in a big way in motors and generators, till the electronic developed, till the computer system became much affordable. Till that time, it was only an industrial curiosity for many, many years. 2000 was the watershed year which began the big usage of this particular thing. Global warming concerns, ozone depletion, all came known because of satellite, space. People, when the satellite image was taken, then you could see the ozone hole that is developing. Then the reasons were understood. And with all that came the awareness and demand for renewable energy. Today, whether you call solar, whether you call wind, whether you call biogas or thermoelectric, everywhere a little bit of rare earth you will find. Solar cells are polished with purified cerium. Your windmills use permanent magnet generators. Your thermoelectrics use lanthanum-based electronics. And most important, all your hybrid cars today need a supercapacitor to convert their kinetic energy into electrical energy at the time of braking, decelerating. Earlier, it is simply you brake and your kinetic energy is wasted. With all that, the world was enjoying the cheap benefit of getting rare earths from China. Everybody has to close their business by end of 20th century because Chinese material was flooding the market. By 2005, the Chinese started tightening the tap, and by 2010, it became a world crisis. If you look at this history, we also closed this operation in 2004 because it was not commercially competitive. This is the monazite processing. With this background, this will have interest. And all these years, 1952 to 2004, we did it by alkali process. And we are asked to restart this 2007, not because of a boom in rare earth market, but because of other consideration, driven by atomic energy's requirement. Then we developed the sulfuric acid process. The advantages between the two processes is enumerated. More and more rare earth if it is required, then you need to convert trisodium phosphate coming from alkali route process to a usable product. Trisodium phosphate anyway is usable. It's a good clearing material, but it has a limited market. By sulfuric acid process, you can combine both and make phosphoric acid, which has unlimited market. And this is the thorium plant Trombay, which got closed in 2000 and got decommissioned. It was the first of this plant to be decommissioned under the guidance of Atomic Energy Regulatory Board. The issues of thorium is very clear here. You will see the radioactivity. The thorium is not that bad radioactive in terms of gamma radiation, but it gives a radon gas, which is a daughter product, and it is a heavy gas, and radon is alpha emitter. So if that gas is not ventilated out, this can cause irreparable damage to the operating personnel. And this gas many times get degraded to bismuth and polonium, to the radioactive progenies, and they contaminate the additional structures. These are certain statistics associated with the decommissioning of the plant. And then we will straight away get into the issue of storage of monazite. Because if you process monazite, you get thorium as the waste product, because you have to produce rare earth. Now thorium, if it is not stored, disposal is extremely difficult, and it needs to be stored for the future use in atomic energy. Thorium has got very limited non-atomic usage, like tube light starters, they have a little bit of thorium in that. Your microwave oven, the magnetron, the coils has a little bit of thorium. Your tungsten electrode for welding has a little bit of thorium. Some catalyst like polyphenylene oxide, which is a thermal fluid, has a thorium catalyst. But notwithstanding these usages, they are not enough to consume the entire thorium. And because of its radioactivity, it is often replaced by non-radioactive counterparts. Now this I purposely did. If you are not extracting rare earth, you will be storing monazite anyway, when you take out other minerals containing titanium and zirconium. If you need rare earth for your strategic application, you have to face the challenge of thorium. And I can proudly state, we are the only company in India, or rather in the world, who has the capability to handle thorium in tons. Today we are the repository of thousands of tons of this particular material, and we have demonstrated the expertise to take them out in bulk, reprocess and store them back after carrying out repairs in their storage containers. Now this is the nuclear grade thorium. I just put it for academic interest. Those who are interested, they can take this and have a look at this. We today export this particular material all over the world. The nuclear grade thorium usages are many, apart from the nuclear field. One I said microwave oven, or the other one is glow switch lamps, or many heat resistant applications. And here are the non-thorium applications of thorium, non-nuclear applications of thorium. Now this is the development of magnet. Thorium incidentally also was used in magnet along with rare earth, but later on people abandoned it because rare earth is non-radioactive. This is the supercapacitors, or the energy storing devices, where you find usage of these rare earths in plenty. These are certain usages how the technology dynamics, change dynamics has made technology obsolete. Gas mantle to incandescent bulb to compact fluorescent lamp to LED. But everywhere you find rare earth. Carbon arc cinema to TV, to plasma TV, LCD and LED panel, OLED, latest, now going on. Geolite catalyst to CAT converter, sheet glass to contact lenses. All that has become the old technology obsolete. In my career of 25 years with this company, I have seen 3 technology changes that have affected my product. Strategic importance of these rare earths I have already highlighted. Zircon and titanium that we have already discussed by the way of deliberation in last 2 days, because they are new associated with the nuclear power production. Solvent extraction history, I have already mentioned about this. Now coming to the safety issues, our regulator is here. These are all standard things, but the additional thing are radioactivity and lightning, because they are all done in the open. The industry challenges are public awareness. People need to be taken, because with a vast population in India, where every square kilometer is associated with 250 people. It's a huge number compared to the Africa or Canada, where it is about 15. The challenges are insurmountable. And whatever we do, we need to consider the safety, environment and quality, and all our decisions invariably get influenced by political, social and economic consideration. This is the dialogue between the industry and regulator. The most difficult part is the right-hand side, measuring these risks and quantifying them, and convincing the regulator that yes, the economic benefit does not take precedence over the social good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Patra, for a lucid talk where you have described about the thorium reserves in India as well as the application of thorium in non-reactor site. The floor is open now for any question, for any clarifications on this talk.
I'm Ganeshan from BRC. I want to ask you whether you have the thorium that you extract is mixed with the uranium ore, or it is pure thorium ore. The reason why I'm asking is a mixture of thorium, a mixture of uranium and thorium ore would result in having thorium-230 isotope in the thorium. It won't be a pure thorium-232. So I just wanted to know your comment on this.
Yeah, till 2004, uranium was not separated. After 2004, we started extracting all these heavy metals from the thorium concentrate. Today, the new plant, what we have started in 2015, April 22nd, we got the regulatory clearance for regular production. We separate this uranium from this thorium. And the thorium is stockpiled in much purer form. We no more mix it.
content of thorium.
Yes, yes. Mostly when we process, what we get is lead. That is radium-227. But once, that is about 96% of the total radiation spectrum. But once you remove that, then you encounter the other one, the progeny of uranium-235 or whatever you are telling. That is that thorium-227.
No, I think, let me clarify, this thorium which is extracted, normally we assume in all our studies and design calculations everywhere, it contains only one isotope, 100% thorium-232. But thorium-230, which is formed from the decay of uranium, so if the ore is very old, depending on the ore, the age of the ore, and depending on the admixture ratio of uranium to thorium in the mixture, and when you extract thorium, the thorium-230 chemically gets, indistinguishable with the thorium that you extract. So the percentage of thorium-230 in thorium varies from 0 to 11%. In principle, theoretically, it can be there.
No, we didn't do the isotopic analysis for thorium. Whatever we did was from the radiation point of view.
Okay.
There we find progenies of uranium-235 decay.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, sir, for very eye-opening, nice presentation and in-depth. In fact, this was something new for most of the things for us. This is 2000, you said, thorium plant. If you can throw some light on that, and why it was closed, and what was like, we started in 1955 and closed in 2000. And second is that mines, especially on this, where you have monazite, how do you take public perception at large? Many times there was in the news, like it says, yeah, people are not happy around that, and there could be some kind of other issues. And probably how do you tackle that?
Yeah, see, the thorium plant, as I said, was basically used or installed in 1955 to produce gas mantle grade thorium nitrate. That is from the thorium concentrate which was generated in rare earth division Alwa by processing monazite. Rare earth was sold, trisodium phosphate was sold, crude thorium concentrate was stockpiled, and some of that was brought to this Trumbe plant and processed to make thorium nitrate of gas mantle quality. So that was a plant of 1950. In 1993, you had Latour earthquake, and then the earthquake code came into existence. ARV came in 83, and then radiation restrictions became very, very prominent. Now, as we all know, thorium generates this radon, and the radon over a point of time has the property to contaminate all associated structures. So this plant was becoming absolutely radioactive in a way that the dose burden to individual worker was going up. That was an alarming situation. Second, the building was not built as per earthquake code. So there are a lot of money involved in making the building earthquake proof. And third, the plant has outlived its design life of 40 years. So all these three, and then there was the market declining for thorium-based gas mantle, thanks to potable light and energy efficient lighting system like CFL. So economy didn't permit, safety didn't allow, so we had to close it. Okay. And regarding the public perception, yes, that's a challenge, because everywhere people feel that these are radioactive, and radioactive means cancer. So, but they don't realize there are certain areas which are naturally high background radiation areas, like Karunagapalli in Kerala or somewhere in northeast, where people stay right from the beginning for years in a very high radiation zone. And nothing happens. In fact, it is established their average lifespan is much more than the other people living in non-such normal areas. So it requires continuous dialogue, interaction with them, and taking them around education tours and things like that. It's a Herculean task.
Thank you, sir.
So with, you have a last question.
Just for curiosity, is there a price difference between uranium and thorium, since you are producing it in mass amount? Can you comment if there is a big difference between natural uranium and thorium?
A lot of economists are working on this, and there are a lot of publications. We are used to expressing uranium, $80 per pound resource, $130 per pound resource. So they wanted to classify thorium in similar way. But what brought to their mind, there was a conference organized by Indian IAEA, International Atomic Energy Authority, on this issue. And there were delegates from various countries, about 30-35 countries assembled there. And there was 5 days deliberation on this issue. At the end, it emerged that thorium is anyway a byproduct. So nobody will ever open a mine for thorium, like they would do so for uranium. So far, I mean, there is no need for this.
Okay, Dr. Patra, thank you very much. Since no other clarification is needed, let us give a big hand to Dr. Patra. And on behalf of the organizers, I have a pleasant duty to hand over a memento to Dr. Patra.